County Board meeting. Welcome to everybody. Today is Thursday, March 13th, 2025. Tonight's invocation and pledge of allegiance is by Board Member Michael Thompson. Please stand.
Heavenly Father, give us a chance, O Lord. We pray to be used by you somehow today, and in some manner we may find a way to bless and enrich others' minds. Guide our hands and our words that we will do your will and work. Let us give more of ourselves that others can give of themselves. Help us all. Lord, we pray through each new and dawning day. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. So before we begin, today we were made aware that the passing of Sheriff Richard Myers. He began his law enforcement career with the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department on September 16, 1967, after serving in the Navy. He was a corrections officer, a patrolman, a detective, detective sergeant, lieutenant, and administrative captain, and chief deputy before he was appointed sheriff in 1997 when Don Gasparini retired. He retired in 2014 after 17 years of sheriff, the longest-serving sheriff in Winnebago County history. My condolences, and I know from the Winnebago County Board, condolences to his family, and now I ask everyone to please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, Clerk Gummow, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chairman. We will start with Mr. Penny. Mr. Salgado. Mr. Scroll. Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Tassoni. Mr. Michael Thompson. Mr. Ray Thompson. Ms. Valdez.
Present.
Mr. Webster. Mr. Arena. Mr. Booker. Mr. Butita. Ms. Fellers.
Here.
Mrs. Gorel. Ms. Hansard.
Here.
Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Lindmark. Mr. McCarthy. Mr. McDonald. Mr. Neighbors. Thank you all, Chairman. 18 board members present, 2 board members absent.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. May I entertain a motion to allow Mr. Penny to join this body this evening? We have a motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Thompson. Ms. Fellers.
First.
Mr. Michael Thompson. Second by Mr. Ray Thompson. And others. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Welcome, Mr. Penny. All right, moving on here, we have awards, presentations this evening, no public hearings, and 1 public participation. But first, I want to call the sheriff up. Sheriff Caruana, if you can come on up, we have some awards to be handed out.
I appreciate, Chairman, you taking a moment for the moments of silence for Sheriff Myers, and I want to give my condolences to Sheriff Myers and his family. Again, he served 47 years on the Sheriff's Department and 17 years as a sheriff, so go with God, Sheriff, so thank you. We got some awards here, and you can see how hard everybody in that department works, whether they're in the law enforcement end or the corrections end or the 911 or civil process or courthouse security. And I want to present some awards today on the great work that they've done. If I can get the following corrections officers up here, I appreciate that. Carlos Ariano, Mark Nelson, Hitterman, and Chacho. Okay, we're going to start with the incident, starting with Carlos Arellano. On 1/8 of 25, Officer Carlos Arellano was assigned as the 4C and 4D housing unit officer. While conducting the 2200-hour, 2230 head count, he arrived at cell 12. He assessed the door and asked the inmate for his wristband and found him hanging from a noose he had made out of his jumpsuit. Officer Arellano called the code to cleared his voice and immediately rendered aid. He removed the inmate from the noose and placed him on the floor. Once he realized the inmate was not breathing, he started chest compressions immediately and continued until relief was arrived by other officers. Officer Arellano's dedication to his duties, attention to detail, quick actions, and his ability to remain calm in incredibly stressful situations saved that inmate's life. He's a great example of what I keep saying, these guys have a tough job, a great example of professionalism up there, and I applaud that, and I'm very proud to be able to give these awards. That same night, Mark Nelson, on 1/8/25, Officer Nelson was assisting as 2B and 2C housing officers. At 2200 and 2245 hours, a code was called in the attempt of the suicide attempt by Officer Arellano. Officer Nelson dropped everything and immediately went to the responding units and began helping Arellano with the chest compressions and helping life-saving efforts. He was able to position our inmate in a proper position so the chest compressions made the most effective operation as they did the chest compressions. He continued these chest compressions until the paramedics arrived. Again, another example of the dedication, quick thinking, professionalism of keeping cool, keeping calm under stressful situations, and getting these inmates down from a position of hanging themselves and dying. Nicholas Hitterman, same situation. 2245 hours, he hears the code. He goes to 4C, and he again helps in the compressions, the chest compressions, and continues making sure that all airways were open, that everything was correctly done until the paramedics arrived. Again, the same situation, but they all worked together in unison in practicing those life-saving efforts. Again, very quick thinking, cool, calm under pressure, and very proud of that. Chris, you have, where are you at, Chris? There you go, thank you.
Inmate attempted suicide by hanging 4D, oh, 4C. Yo, bud, you gotta take it off, man. Hey, come on.
Medical code 100,
Come on, get up.
C. Charles,
Yo.
inmate attempting suicide. Medical code 104, C. Charles.
Come on, man. Hey, bud. Come on, hey, bud. Yo, come on, man. Come on.
Looks like
Sir, 12.
12 of 4C.
12!
Cell 12.
Battle, you ready? Drag him out. More room. Hey! Hey!
I do want to say to the county board, we've had these body cams now maybe 6 years, 7 years, kind of lose track of time. I know that was expensive at the time to do that. I appreciate that. I could explain verbally what had happened, but when you see what's actually depicted out there, whether it's in corrections or out on the street in patrol or the detective bureau, what they go through, it really brings it to life on the professionalism on what we're doing. We were the first to go in the region with our body cams before it became state law, and again, I applaud you and I appreciate that. One other award, and we will play the video, was on 10/31/24. Officer Haley Chacha was assigned as a 4B housing unit officer. While conducting the rounds, she noticed that the inmate was not completely visible due to clothes hanging from the bunk obstructing her view. Again, they're held to an accountable level, going making their rounds, and they do a professional job doing that. She entered the cell when the inmate when she could not see the inmate and saw that he had tied his jumpsuit around his neck, and again was trying to hang himself, what she was in the process of doing, not breathing. She called in a clear, calm voice the code, started cutting them down, and then other officers assisted her with the chest compressions until the paramedics arrived. Again, professional, cool, calm, under pressure. And unless you are under that pressure, you can sit and calmly think it through. But when you have to react, this is where the professionalism comes through, and the cool calmness of their training that they do all the time, constantly. So I'd like to give them all an award. However, you do have that one too, right? And then we'll give out the awards.
Nelson. Code 100, inmate trying to hang themselves. 4B boy, cell 20. Hey! Code 100, 4B boy, inmate trying to hang themselves. Hey, what are you trying to do? Hey! Cell 20. What are you doing?
Almost when you can. Stop that override.
Checking for a pulse and then beginning the compressions. Again, very professional under extreme, strenuous, stressful situations. I want to give the awards now. I appreciate it. We'll go with Ariano first.
Wow, isn't that amazing? There's something to be said for well-trained in reacting under pressure, but being very calm. So tonight I want to give each and every one of you a Chairman's Service Excellence Award on behalf of the Winnebago County Board and myself. So I'll just read one of them and then present you with the awards. So this is the Chairman's Service Excellence Award, and this one is actually to Officer Haley Chacho. With great appreciation, I, Joseph Shirelli, Chairman of the Winnebago County Board, do hereby recognize Officer Haley Chacho for her life-saving actions on October 31st, 2024. Because of your dedication, attention to detail, and ability to remain calm while acting quickly during a stressful situation, a life was saved. Officer Chacho represents the very best values of our community and serves as a great example of the standards of professionalism we strive to achieve. Your life-saving actions are commended. So congratulations to all of you. We'll receive one of these, and let's have a standing ovation for all of them. Okay, next on their agenda, we have a presentation. Presentation is about the trustee program update with Eric Setter and Michael Dunn Jr. from Region 1 Planning Council. Come on up.
Ready to go?
Perfect. Come on up. You're doing all the work.
Did he get sick or something?
How do you want me to? No, that's not working.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having Eric Setter and myself here tonight to present to you fiscal year 24, ending September 30th, 2024, results for the Winnebago County Trustee Program. For a few of you that do not know who we are, Michael Dunn, Executive Director of Region 1 Planning Council. We serve as the agent to the Winnebago County Trustee, and
Hi, Eric Setter, Region 1 Planning Council with the Trustee Program and also the Land Bank Program at R1.
so we won't take up much of your time tonight, but we wanted to update you on basically record success in fiscal year 24, best year we've had as agent for Winnebago County. We also serve now as agent to Boone County's trustee program. They also had a very strong year in the past year. Real quick, for a few of those for better clarification on what it means to be agent to the trustee, Illinois state statute requires the Winnebago County Board, led by the Winnebago County Chair, to be the trustee for all taxing districts in Winnebago County that are owed past due taxes on homes and other properties that have not paid property taxes after 3 full years. As a result, if a property has not paid taxes and those taxes have not been bought at the tax sale, it ends up in the trust of properties that you are responsible for taking care of and then selling on behalf of all the taxing districts. We act as your agent in doing that. And so in fiscal year 2024, we sold 363 properties. I think every structure we had? Yep, every structure at 44 structures. And then amazingly, a really good number, 319 vacant pieces of property. That's a really good number for the program. And just missed $1 million of sales that can go back to all the taxing districts that were owed that tax dollar. Thank you. Here is, we've been asked to present it this way, but here's a spreadsheet showing all the fiscal years under our management of the work that we've done. And if, for those that might not be able to see up close, I lost my glasses, so I'm going to do my best. You have basically $1 million of sales with $262,798 of interest. What that interest means is interest that somebody came and paid their taxes late, so they didn't lose their property, but because of the trustee program, they didn't want to see that property sold, came in and paid their taxes late. The underlying principal of the taxes that were repaid gets automatically redistributed to all the taxing districts, but the redemption interest goes into this trustee fund in which it is counted as revenue. And then what you'll see is basically per our IGA, $150,000 a year towards maintenance of these properties that comes in every year. And that's the third revenue line. And so for fiscal year 2024, $1.4 million of inflow into the program. And if we look at line 6 where it says maintenance expenses, we again see a decrease full year over full year. I can answer questions about fiscal year 23, but that was an anomaly. In fiscal year 24, only $41,000 of that 150 was spent on maintenance, which means that 110,000 rolls into the next year towards the 150, if that makes sense. So of the 150 that was budgeted, Eric ran a very tight shop with all the properties that we received, and we only spent $41,000 of that maintenance money to make sure that grass is cut, garbage is removed, there's no municipal liens put on the property. And then we had operation expenses. Operation expenses are not R1 expenses. R1 does this for no labor cost. You do not pay R1. We'll get to what is paid to R1, but you do not pay R1 any sort of operational cost. Operation expenses is mostly legal. And in this case, in fiscal year 2024, we inherited 2 years of properties. There was an issue in 23 where there was no properties that came into the program. So in fiscal year 2024, we had to basically do legal work, do skip tracing. We used Sheriff Caruana and his team to do service, and Sheriff Caruana received money for that out of this line item. And so we had a lot of properties to serve and get notice to. And so when you deduct all that and set up the reserve for next year, you basically have $473,000 approximately of expenses. So a net revenue line or net income line of $938,748 per our IGA. 1/3 of it goes to R1, and then the other 2/3 go to the taxing districts to split the proceeds. I believe this was a request.
Yeah, this was when we are meeting with Board Member Salgado on the answer.
That's right. So per that meeting, nice to see you tonight. We wanted to show what is Winnebago County as a taxing district's cut of that overall pie compared to all the other taxing districts. So based on all the tax codes and based on how the Treasurer's Office distributes funds, Winnebago County, when we talk about these numbers, Winnebago County is only about 7.5%. The other amount goes in a split amongst all the other taxing districts in the county. And then we were also asked, and I thought it was a great suggestion, to break up the activity in the program in fiscal year 24 by county board district. And so there you'll see the current inventory as well as how many were sold in each district. And it does show you, while there are some areas of concentration, it really does impact almost every county board district. And then right now, we're getting new properties in June.
June, July.
So June, July, the program's due for more properties, in which we'll have one more auction. But at this point, we're holding on to 169 pieces of land. We're constantly trying to sell that. Unless there's a land bank phase going on our online sales site, we're constantly trying to find buyers for those remaining parcels. We started the program with how many properties?
I think 1,000 plus, I believe, yeah.
And then how many pieces of land?
I think most of them were land, yeah.
Yeah, so to get it down to 169 is remarkable. Chairman Shirelli led and kind of created on your behalf a neighboring property program where we approached proactively and very aggressively neighboring property owners to see if they wanted to take ownership of that land, and that was a wild success as well, and that helped us liquidate a lot of the parcels and get it back into tax-paying status. With that, Eric and I are here to answer any of your questions, but right now, very little activity in fiscal year 25, and there won't be until we get those properties come June.
Any questions for Mr. Dunn or Mr. Setter? Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Dunn and Mr. Setter. Could you give us the locations of where blight reduction was, or blight mitigation was done with the proceeds that R1 took from the program?
Sure, Mr. Arena. We have several blight reduction or blight mitigation efforts. The biggest one has been securing, what was the EPA award? $1 million brownfield EPA grant, using that blight reduction money both to write the grant and to match it. That was mostly for Loves Park. You know the grant well, you run it, go ahead.
Yeah, we've also done work in Rockton. We're working with McChesney Park on properties in South Beloit. So a lot of that EPA brownfield funds are going to those communities, as well as Loves Park and Rockford as well.
What are the areas of Loves Park?
Loves Park and McChesney Park, it kind of is a triangle between North 2nd Street, kind of Windsor Road, and then back down Alpine to Riverside, if you will. It's kind of a triangle-looking shape.
So, you know, the Mayor Jury, the other mayors, Rockton, very, very happy. James Richter, working with James Richter weekly. That's been a huge positive program.
So our agreement requires an annual accounting of how the money that's taken by R1 is used for blight mitigation. So if you look at it, it's about, what, $300,000 a year. So I'm sure you didn't spend $1 million. It didn't cost us $1 million for that grant, right?
No, but
So what I would like is an actual, because the contract requires an annual accounting of that, of how blight is being mitigated in the county. So would you be able to provide us a more detailed report for the years where it hasn't occurred and this past year of what happened?
So, Mr. Arena, the R1 board, which Chairman Chiarelli is about to be vice chair of, they dictate how that money is spent and they approve it. I'll speak with that board and see what we can work up for you, but I report to that board, and that is that board's financial responsibility.
Right, but the contract specific.
I'll look at it.
This board gets a report every year.
We'll get you a report.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I think
Yes.
Board Member Penny
Oh,
has
Mr.
a
Penny.
question.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the report given, and my district had the third highest amount of properties that were moved. And so knowing the amount of vacant properties I know we have in our district, I do appreciate the work that you've done to move those properties out of District 9. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Penny.
Thank you, Mr. Penny. Any other questions from, oh, yes, Angela.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dunn, could you please give just a brief explanation what the anomaly was in 2023?
Yeah, so there's always a 3-year lag to a lot of the processing or upfront actions, County Board Member Fellers. So what happened was during the transition, there was a lot of disagreement and there was a lot of second guessing made when we became agent, and there was delays leading to that because your former agent was considering, legal action, right? And so because of that delay, we did not become agent right away, and in that, the treasurer's office did not notify your former agent or us of a tax sale that we needed to be at to basically be present to intake properties. And so because of that 1-year miss, 3 years later, which is my point, which was fiscal year 23, right? There were no properties to come into the program. So we had to operate that program in 23 without any sales, but we also then had to do all the legal work for the properties that were coming in fiscal year 24. So the anomaly was you had a high degree of expenses in fiscal year 23 that then paid off with $1 million of sales in fiscal year 24.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Fellers. Any other questions for Mr. Dunn or Mr. Setter? None? Oh, yes, Ms. Hanser.
Absolutely. I'll include that in my report to the board that Mr. Arena suggested. Yep.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Dunn. Thank you, Mr. Setter.
Thank you for having us. Have a great night.
You too. All right, moving on, we do not have a public hearing this evening, but we do have public participation. I'm going to read a statement very quickly. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers may not address zoning matters which are pending before the ZBA, zoning committee, or the county board. Personnel matters or pending or threatened litigation may not be addressed in open session. An individual may speak a maximum of 3 times per calendar year on the same topic. This prohibition shall include the repetition of the same topic in a statement on what is purported to be a different topic. Personal attacks or inappropriate language of any sort will not be tolerated. So we have one speaker this evening, is Nancy Edwardson. If you want to come forward, please.
Good evening. Yes, I'm a total animal lover, taking care of lots and lots of animals in my lifetime, and especially in the last 12 years. In McChesney Park, we have issues, but also what I'm here to talk about is animal services. And I was over there last week, and I finally got to meet Roger Tessemeyer. He's a wonderful guy. He's just wonderful. I encourage any of you board members to stop in and meet Roger or make an appointment. His extension is 319-4134. Of course, area code 815. But he is just wonderful. And I worked with him. We were adopting a dog. And when we first got there, we had a little trouble. We had a little issue, a little staff issue, which needed to be taken care of. And it was taken care of. A woman was rather rude. So going on about past that, I don't want to go over my 3 minutes, but you know, we need to focus on animal services. We really need a water cooler for the patrons, really bad. There's two broken water fountains at the facility, 2. So they're broken, they can't even be redone. So we need a new water cooler brought in, you guys. Whoever takes care of animal services, please get them a water cooler. And the vending machine was taken out of the lobby a couple of years ago. And they have a Coke machine for the employees, but they have nothing for the patrons when you come in to adopt an animal. Bless you. And I just think it's really important that we get the cooler. I'll pay for it myself. You know what? I would pay for the cooler myself if you allow me to do that. Just talk to me after the meeting. I'll be glad to pay for the cooler. But the vending machine, you know, we do need a Coke machine for the lobby. And I love working with Roger. So if you get a chance, meet Roger Tessemeyer. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Edwardson. All right, moving on. The approval of minutes may entertain a motion to approve the February 13th, 2025 and lay over the February 27th, 2025 minutes. Do I have a motion? Mr. Michael Thompson motions to approve and lay over. Do we have a second? Mr. Joe Hoffman seconds that motion. Is there any discussion on the approval of the minutes? Hear none. Are there any board members opposed to the approval or the layover of the minutes? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. Next is the consent agenda, which includes the raffle report and the auditor's report. May I entertain a motion, please, to approve. Mr. Booker. Motion to approve by Mr. Booker, second by Mr. Salgado. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Hear none. Are there any board members opposed to either the raffle report or the auditor's report? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. Next are appointments. We have no appointments to be read in this evening. Going forward, we have reports of standing committees. First is the Finance Committee, Mr. Butita.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
prior to getting started with the standing reports, I'd like to make a motion for a brief 10-minute recess, please.
Brief 10-minute recess?
Yes.
We have a motion for a recess. We need a vote on that. Is there a second? Mr. Scroll seconds that motion. Are there anybody, board members opposed to taking a 10-minute recess for the motion? Very good. We're recessed. Mr. Chris, if you could start the clock on that. Just checking if 10 minutes works on the clock. Okay. I'm just. please.
Okay.
I think we have enough. Looks like we have enough. All right, may I entertain a motion to come back into open session, please? Motion by Ms. Valdez, second by Mr. Booker. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're back in open session. Next is up Mr. Butita, Finance Committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a resolution authorizing settlement of a claim against the County of Winnebago entitled Cesar Chavez versus Winnebago County, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita and second by Mr. Booker. Any discussion, Mr. Butita?
It's a workman's comp claim in the amount of $47,272.
Any board member discussion on this resolution? Okay, hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
We have an ordinance under old business. Should we take that up now?
Sure.
Okay. So this ordinance was read in at the last meeting. I would like to move to send this back to committee.
Okay, so this is under unfinished business, I believe.
Yeah, the ordinance for approval,
Under finance.
budget amendment for various health department grant awards.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Butita to send this ordinance back to committee. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Arena. Any discussion on sending this back to
Mr.
committee?
Chairman, yeah, so the purpose of this is we had in finance this week, we had another grant from the health department that we ended up holding over for discussion because the health department wasn't available to discuss it with us. Part of the, one of the grants in this group of grants is similar to that, so we're going to discuss them all at once
Very
next
good.
week.
Thank you. Any further discussion, sending this back to committee, this ordinance? Yes, Mr. Salgado.
Just a question out of, I don't know if Dr. Martell's here. Just wanted to see if there was any urgency or nothing, or if it's just already, you know, they're doing the work that they need to do. So is there any urgency? That's all I'm asking.
Anybody on staff could answer that?
I don't
Steve?
think there is a sense of urgency. I think actually some of this work is already underway. So, yeah.
All right, very good. Yes, Ms. Squirrel.
Is this the grant that came in late after the budget was approved? And that what all this is because it's a necessity. And all we have to do is approve it. We don't have to do anything else. It's costing us nothing to do it.
There was discussion in Finance Committee too.
Pardon?
In the Finance Committee, the members wanted it discussed, and nobody from the Health Department was there to discuss it, so we decided to hold it over to the next meeting next week.
But all it is a grant she has, that the health department has, they're already using it.
Well, nobody was there to explain that.
Well, I am. I'm on the board.
Okay. But you weren't at the Finance Committee, so we held it over till the next meeting.
So be it.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion on sending this back to Finance Committee, this ordinance? Any board members opposed to sending this back? Want to do a roll call, please, clerk?
Is that a yes, a roll call?
Yes, roll call, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We will start with Mr. Neighbors, Mr. Penny,
He's on mute.
Mr. Penny,
He's on mute. Oh, yeah.
There he goes.
Sorry. Yes.
That was a yes. Thank you, Mr. Penny. Mr. Salgado. Mr. Scroll. Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Tassoni. Mr. Thompson, Michael Thompson. Mr. Ray Thompson. Ms. Valdez.
Yes.
Mr. Webster. Mr. Arena. Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Butita?
Yes.
Ms. Fellers?
Yes.
Mrs. Gorel?
No.
Ms. Hansard? Mr. Hoffman? Mr. Lindmark? Mr. McCarthy? Mr. McDonald is still absent. Chairman, 13 board members yes, 6 board members no, 1 board member absent.
Very good. The ordinance will be sent back to the Finance Committee.
Thank
I don't
you,
even
Mr.
see it on the agenda.
Thank you. All right, so that took care of the old business.
Down here?
Zoning Committee, Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. We have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Economic Development Committee, Mr. John Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Economic Development Committee has 2 items to consider tonight. The first item is a resolution electing to opt in to the Illinois Electronics Recycling Program for program year 2026, and I so move for its adoption.
Moved by Mr. Sweeney, second by Ms. Hansert. Is there any discussion, Mr. Sweeney?
Not for me.
Any board member discussion on this resolution? Hearing none, are there any board members opposed to the passage of this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Sweeney.
Our next item is a resolution allocating host fee funds to the Rockford Metropolitan Exposition, Auditorium, and Office Building Authority, doing business as the Rockford Area Venues and Entertainment Authority, otherwise known as RAVE, for capital improvement projects and infrastructure at the BMO Center, and I so move and would like to speak to it.
Moved by Mr. Sweeney. Is there a second? Ms. Valdez seconds that motion. Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to thank Gretchen Gilmore for showing up tonight from the BMO. She's been extremely outgoing with information and data and gave Mr. Neighbors, myself, and Mr. McCarthy a very eye-opening tour of the facility that we were able to bring back good information to our respective groups. As we consider this tonight, I also want to commend, I guess, the RAVE Board in general, especially Craig Thomas, the chair, and John Phelps, the vice chair, that, you know, as you know, or you may not know, but the norm for these types of venues around the country is to operate in deficit, sometimes extreme deficit. And indeed, at one time, our very own facility did do that. But in the last decade, there's been vast improvements in the financial handling of the inner workings of the BMO, and that's nothing to pass over. That's a very remarkable event, to the point where, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gretchen, but last year or so, it was a break-even time operationally for the BMO Center, possibly even going into the positive operationally. The last 2 fiscal years. So that's pretty remarkable. So I do commend you in running it, and the RAVE Board. As per the agreement itself, I would like to read in a friendly amendment that, so those of you that were on the Economic Development Committee know that there were amendments that were read in to try to tighten this up a little bit from the county's perspective. And this is, I guess, a tidying up of that effort. It did come out of Economic Development Committee unanimous, which was nice. But the amendment is into the 11th whereas. It would read, the language that would be added is a minimum of $800,000 a year for capital improvement projects and infrastructure. So what the whole whereas would read is, whereas said county allocation shall be in effect as long as the city of Rockford contributes a minimum of $800,000 a year for capital improvement projects and infrastructure to the BMO, or up to a maximum of 5 years as outlined within this document, or whichever ends first. And the intent of that amendment is basically the city of Rockford is going to front load a vast portion of their $9 million allocation. But the minimum projection that they would conceivably spend within our 5-year time frame is $800,000, and I think that we should hold them, to that standard by caveating our money, by making sure that that money is received, and that we are by far the junior partner, but still participating towards only capital expenses in the next 5 years. So I move that to be an amendment to this resolution.
So we have an amendment which was made by Mr. Sweeney, and a motion, and a seconded by, do we have a second on this amendment? Mr. McCarthy seconds the amendment. Is there any discussion, county board members, concerning this amendment that was read in by Mr. Sweeney? Ms. Fellers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am opposed to this amendment. I am opposed to making any financial decisions on behalf of the county that are predicated upon the financial solvency of another municipality. In the event that Rockford were not able to hold up its commitments to the BMO would need our money more than ever, and it would be kicking them while they were down and spitting on our downtown area of Rockford. Let's call this money what this money really is. Capital improvement projects are jobs for working families. Capital improvement projects put our citizens to work so that they can pay their bills and take their kids out to dinner and live the lives that we want them to have. And I just do not understand why anyone is opposed to giving economic development money to an economic generating thing that we have in our county. We're either in or we're out. So I don't understand why we would place any unnecessary hurdles for keeping our working families at work and keeping our monies in our county.
Thank you, Ms. Fellers. Any further discussion on the amendment that's before you? I'm going to have the clerk call the, Mr. Sweeney.
If I might, thank you for letting me speak, Mr. Chairman. On one level, I can understand what you're saying, but we're not going it alone. We would conceivably be doing this in true partnership with that municipality. And I would add, since Gretchen is here, do you feel comfortable that should this amendment pass, that it would not jeopardize the county's contribution in any way? So it really is just for tightening up from our own end that agreement and partnership with another municipality towards RAVE.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Ms. Fellers?
I thank you, Mr. Sweeney, for asking that question. And it's Gretchen?
Gretchen.
Okay, Gretchen. You answered, I don't think so. And I do defer to your expertise. I'm very impressed with the work that you do at BMO. Is there a guarantee that there is zero risk? Like there's no chance that Rockford would pull the money?
Gretchen, if you want to stand or come forward.
She'll have to come to a microphone?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, she has to come to a microphone.
It's right over here, Gretchen.
Come up here.
She could.
I apologize for putting you on the spot like this.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you all. The city has committed to a minimum of $9 million for the next 10 years. I have seen projections of the redevelopment fund where we do get our subsidy payments, and I believe after the bonds are paid off in 2026, I think the city's going to be in a good financial position, and I'm not worried at all that they're not going to be able to support us anymore.
So the answer is yes, they could pull their money?
Well, they technically have not signed their IGA yet, but I can confirm they are very committed. We have our agreement already in place, and the only holdup has been the county discussions that we're having now, and once we get this finalized, then I can finalize the city agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Mr. Webster, question?
Thank you, Chairman. As Gretchen just mentioned, the IGA has not been signed yet. This hasn't gone through a committee yet either. And so I don't know why we would even entertain entering an amendment without it even going before committee. Now, if I may, I'm going to go a little further with this. This morning, over the breakfast table, I was going over all this information that we have pertaining to this Metro Center. And I found something. This is in the original agreement now, the one that we're working under now, the original. So on page 19 of this document, it was January 25th, 07. And in one of the recitals that's on here, on page 19, and it's 9.9 recital. It says, solicitation, no solicitation. During the term of this agreement, the county shall not be solicited to provide any further funds toward the renovation or operating cost of the Metro Center. It clearly states no solicitation while we're working under this contract. Now, for your information, on October 9th, 2024, there's a letter here that is addressed to County Board Chairman Chiarelli, County Board Member John Sweeney, RE Rockford Area Venues Entertainment Authority, and this is from RAVE. And so I won't read the whole document to you, but I'm going to read you the part of the matter that makes the point here. It says, as we have discussed with the chairman, in conjunction with the ongoing support from the city of Rockford, so you've already violated it, because you're doing a discussion already, and it says no solicitation. It goes on to say, asking the Winnebago County to continue its annual $460,000 support for the BMO beyond its current expiration date in 2026. We can assure you the county continued 460 annual support will be used for solely capital fund. So, once again, the language is clear in there on this document, and the language is clear on the solicitation, on the ask, thereby breaking the agreement. There's a breach of conflict, in other words, or breach of contract, I believe. And so with that, and with this also, coupled with this new thing you want to bring here, but I'm making a motion to send this back to committee because of the breach of contract. And I think there'll be other information too that needs to be vetted in committee. So my motion is to send this back to committee.
Point of order. I have a motion on the floor, do I not?
Yes, there is a motion on the floor.
And
We'll complete that motion. Go ahead, Mr. Sweeney.
And if I might rebut that, I was on the board. It's crazy to even say this, but I was on the board back then in 2007. Also, during that stint of my service, and I remember the addition of that language into that agreement, and it clearly was language stipulated that for that current set of work in which the bonds were issued, for that scope of work at that time, that we did not want at the time, I don't think it wasn't called rape, we did not want the Metro Center, what it was called at that time, to come back and ask for further, any overages on the scope of the work that was being done at that time. So I do not believe that that is applicable at all to what we're talking about right now. And I would also ask for the question to be called on my motion.
Calling the question on your motion for the amendment? Is that what you said? Couldn't hear you. Okay. Clerk, can you call the roll on the amendment for Mr. Sweeney?
Mr. Salgado. Mr. Scroll. Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Mr. Tassoni. Mr. Michael Thompson.
No.
Mr. Ray Thompson. Ms. Valdez.
No.
Mr. Webster. Mr. Arena. Mr. Booker. Mr. Butita. Ms. Fellers.
No.
Mrs. Gorel. Ms. Hansard. Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Lindmark. Mr. McCarthy. Mr. McDonald is still absent. Mr. Neighbors. Mr. Penny.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, 11 yes, 8 no, and 1 absent.
Very good. The amendment is approved. Mr. Sweeney.
I move the adoption as amended.
We have a motion to approve as amended. Do I have a second? Mr. McCarthy seconds that motion. Any discussion, Mr. Sweeney?
Not for me at this time.
Yeah.
Point of order.
Yes, Mr.
I did make a motion to send this back to committee.
Yeah.
I have to make that motion again?
Yes. Yes. You have to do it now.
After this amendment? Right now. That's what I'm saying. So the amendment passed, so I'm making a motion,
Yes.
send this back to committee,
So,
because this is the working document that we're under right now.
So Mr. Webster motions to send this back to committee. Do I have a second by Mr. Michael Thompson, Mr. Paularina? Is there any discussion on the motion to send this back to committee by board members? Ms. Valdez and Mr. Arena.
Yes, I just want to say that I believe that it would be doing us a disservice to send this back to committee. We have a fiscal responsibility for economic development in this county. I think that RAVE provides a magnificent opportunity for us to expand our revenue resources as a county. They're asking for capital improvements to be made on a facility that is falling into disrepair. The longer we wait, the more expensive this has the potential to become. So I would urge board members to think about that when casting their vote. So I will not be voting to send this back to committee.
Very good. Mr. Arena, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand Mr. Sweeney's explanation of the circumstances for the insertion of that language, but I think the language doesn't reflect whatever that intent was. It is what it is, and I think based on that, it has to be resolved. And for that reason, I agree to send it back to committee. And to Ms. Valdez's point, we're talking today about something that's not going to occur for another year. So none of this takes place for a year from now. So if it waits another month, it doesn't make any difference at all. So, and I know, based on conversations that have taken place with my colleagues on the Republican side, there's a lot of different opinions about how this is structured, and I think it would benefit from further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Ms. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that if the purpose of sending it back to the committee is to go over the amendment that is already passed, then it's moot. So I don't understand why we would bother to send it back to committee. This money is needed. This amendment was asked for and it is passed, and we should move on with business. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fellers. Mr. Michael Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no problem supporting improving the Metro Center. I mean, one of the reasons we have it is we have hockey fans around Winnebago County. I mean, some weekends when I would ride or drive down to church, I would see a lot of people just waiting to be admitted into the Metro Center so they could watch the Ice Hawks play. And it's a great way for people to have some fun, watching a game, whether it's with your friends, with your family, or with your colleagues. I also believe that fiscal responsibility should always be one of our top priorities as a county government. I mean, we're elected to represent our voters to make sure our county is obviously heading in the right direction financially and in other ways. To me personally, $400,000 is a lot of money, especially since it'll be coming out of the county's pocket. So I'm in full support of sending this back to the Economic Development Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Goro?
I only have one thing to say. This is the first time I heard that Rockford hasn't made their commitment. And what I would like, whichever way we go, I would like to see on the bottom line that it says it's contingent upon the signing of Rockford to the IGA. And this has to be on the contingency that they do sign the IGA. That's the only thing, because I'm in favor of this. I want it to go through. It has, when this first started, it was started because of the fact it was for economic growth. And you can't tell me that because we have the airport that has had real good economic growth, and we supplied them with money. The conservatory on North 2nd, we supplied them with money, and boy, have they brought a lot of business into here. The Discovery brought a lot of business into here. This has continued to bring us business that, yeah, we might not see it. You might not be down at on the river to see all the buses that come in there because you don't live in this area. But the only thing I want to make sure of is that it's contingent upon Rockford signing. That's it. And I think our attorney would agree to that.
Thank you, Ms. Goro. Mr. Webster?
Yeah, thank you. Once again, debate about whether that's a worthy spending and that should be put aside. We're dealing with a legal document here. Since when do we trample over contracts? Since when do we say, well, I was there several years ago, and I was there too. But I see this in this contract that says that, no solicitation. And by you guys saying you're gonna ignore that, you're working in collusion to get this through when clearly it states that. Am I wrong? I'm gonna ask the state's attorney. Am I wrong about this?
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Webster, that is what the document says, the section 9.9 from the current agreement. So
Yes.
that is correct.
And we're working under this agreement till next year. Till next year, we're working under this agreement right here. So if you guys want to be up and up on this and take a legal approach on this and forget about, at this point, forget about is it deserving or not. Think about working under a contract, an agreement that was between the city and the county and Rave. And it's signed by Rave and by Danny Wirtz from the Blackhawks. Addressed specifically to the chairman and to Mr. Sweeney. That evidence right there clearly shows they went for solicitation clear back in October. We should have known about this back in October. I shouldn't have had to, reread this contract over my Rice Krispies, but I'm glad I did. Because this is showing something is wrong. And you guys, if you're gonna gloss over that and ignore the fact, and you're gonna ignore this contract, then we should tear up every damn contract we've ever had until it suits our needs. We can go back and say, I remember 9 years ago, we wouldn't have done that. Well, no, but it's on paper here. It's on paper. We are bound by our contracts. If we don't honor our contracts, who are we? Our word is not good for spit. You don't honor your contracts. That's the point I'm trying to make about sending it back to committee.
All right, thank you, Mr. Webster. Mr. Butita, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you. So this might be for the state's attorneys. Would it be legal to enter into this contract? If we enter into this contract, would it be a valid contract based on the wording of the existing IGA?
Please.
Thank you, Chairman. So there's no separate agreement or contract on the agenda. It's just to allocate additional funding. So if the county board wanted to do that and they're in agreement with Braves to provide that funding, they can.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Somebody else had their hand up? Yes, Mr. Booker.
Thank you, Chairman. Of course, I represent the citizens west of Meridian Road, Winnebago, Pecatonica, Seward, Westlake Village. Their concerns that they've shared with me recently is basically what is our return. Of course, the return on investment of the Metro Center, financially, the downtown businesses benefit greatly. But when citizens in my area see the growth continuing to move closer and closer to the Boone County line, benefiting Boone County and Belvedere residents, all we have left for entertainment west of the river is the Coronado and the Metro Center. They do the best they can with the Winnebago County Fair, and they see no representation from the city of Rockford, the city of Loves Park, McChesney Park, Roscoe, Rockton, Cherry Valley. There's never any representation out at the Winnebago County Fair in Pecatonica. So I would say 90% of their concerns were about what that money could be spent for Winnebago County residents. So there's some numbers that I'd like to see, and I'm in support of sending it back to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. Somebody else hasn't spoken yet? No? Okay, Mr.
I've got my hand up.
Oh, Mr. Penny. I need to get that bigger there. I can see that hand.
Thank you. I do want to echo my district has county residents, Rockford residents, and as I once sat as vice chair of the Rockford area Convention and Visitors Bureau, I had firsthand knowledge to the numbers of the residents that attended just Ice Hogs games alone through ticket sales, etc. And as Ms. Feller spoke about, capital improvement projects, yes, it puts people to work. However, the need for economic drivers in this county is important. The need for quality of life events and quality of life opportunities for our residents is important, at least to the people that I see attending through ticket sales in this county. And I don't believe that, and Mr. Webster, I wish you would have shared that with us. I would have loved to have seen it. I don't believe we're doubling up in payments if we approve this. This is going to be a continuation or extension of a contract, if you will. I don't believe that's going to violate a contract just because we're talking about extending it. However, I haven't seen the language myself, but knowing the impact that a convention center has or an arena has on a city and on a county, it ripples well past the boundaries of our geographical lines, and I will definitely be supporting this.
Thank you, Mr. Penny. Do you want to go first, Mr. Sweeney or Mr. Arena? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A number of things I guess wanted to rattle off. One is that this amendment is to bring it back to committee, and it came out of that committee unanimously. So I just want to state that again for the record. I also would respectfully submit to some of the other comments made here about doing things for the citizens of Winnebago County, but not only is Rockford located in Winnebago County, being its most populous city, but the data about attendance at the BMO Center clearly shows that thousands of people from all 20 county board districts attend Ice Hogs games alone. That's not counting other types of events that are held there, concerts, stand-up, conventions, things like that. So yes, it's located in Rockford, Illinois, which is located in Winnebago County. But I would submit to you that it's actually a regional asset. You can't have a center like this all over the county. People drive from within the county to go there, from all the corners of the county. Also important to note that people drive from outside of this county to attend events at the BMO, which of course is a driver of hotel motel tax funds, it's a driver of MFT funds. It's a direct benefit to money spent on roads, for instance, just as one example of how it benefits every municipality within this county. It's not arbitrary for us to think that this is something worth us looking into with economic development dollars. We are a fiscally responsible government. We're 7.5% of the tax bill on anyone's property taxes. We have a host fee that generates a little over $4 million a year. And if we want to go down the road of returns on investments for everything that money is helping to support, that's an interesting conversation that I'm also willing to have. But I believe that since we are an appointing entity of RAVE, we're a part of it. We have governing authority, in essence, over who we appoint there, that we would want to have those dollars spent. And so it's not a completely arbitrary thing. This went through committee. I understand there's differing of opinions on this. I don't believe that language in a document from 20 years ago, clearly intended to be for the project of its time, which is coming to an end, in any way restricts this board from acting on its own free will. And the timing of it to go through now, of course, is what has changed since 2007. We have a relationship with a professional sports franchise called the Chicago Blackhawks. That's something that we didn't have at that time. And in fact, if this county didn't participate in that investment at that time, the facility arguably would not have been brought up to a standard to even to compete for it. It's been transformative. It's part of our identity. Thousands of kids every year go there, thousands of adults, and everything else that I said about the economic impact of having a center like that. So as they being RAVE lays out a capital plan to do needed work on said building, last minute is not really a responsible thing. Either we're going to be a partner or we're not, and I think that we should be in this regard, and they need time to ramp that up and make those investments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, so first I want to say that I am in favor of supporting the Metro Center or BMO in some form. Right? I have some opinions about how this is structured, and I think that this needs work. But ultimately, I do favor us helping to support it and help getting it to a place where it's financially stable. That being said, the issue that Mr. Webster brought up is real. Those are words in the existing contract that have a specific meaning. Mr. Sweeney just mentioned that what's in that contract clearly has a meaning, and his interpretation is different than Mr. Webster's interpretation. By sending it back to committee, you can actually go back and look at the record and understand better why those words are in there, what was the intent. And then we can all make an informed decision as to whether we overturn language that was inserted by a prior board because circumstances have changed, or we just think it's no longer relevant, or it's, as Mr. Sweeney said, it's not applicable, or we can, decide that we should uphold what was decided by that board. Again, all of this doesn't take place. What we're voting on now doesn't come into play for a year. So being able to make a truly informed decision in your vote, I think is never a bad thing. And that's why, again, I think we should take the time to be well educated on what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Did you have anything further to say, Mr. Webster, that's new?
Yes, I do.
Perfect.
Brought forward this information for you. This is factual information. Regardless of the year of it, it was a document that we agreed to It's a living document. Regardless of the age, we still live by the Constitution. Look how old that document is, okay? It's a signed document. John, you made the statement early on in this discussion here, which, by the way, before I get to that, this discussion on whether it brings economic development to the city or to the county in that, and is it, is that the value of doing this? Set that aside for a minute. I'm talking about the legality here. Let's do things legally. So back to this. John, so early on here, when I brought this up, you said you were aware of that. You were aware of that no solicitation recital in 9.9. You indicted yourself by saying that, because then you went ahead with this document here in October 2024, knowing that that statement was in this document. You still move forward.
Mr. Webster, direct your comments to the
meeting
chair,
with them.
please, not directly to the board member.
All right, Chairman? You too apparently knew this then, Chairman, that that document was there.
You are correct. I did. And what did the state's attorney say? This is not changing that agreement. It's allocating funds to the future of 2027.
So with that document, reading that on there, and it says no solicitation, that didn't bother you to move forward?
Not over advice of counsel.
Is that, so, okay, so now I'm asking the question, now, is this a legal gripe that I have here?
Ms. Vaughn?
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, it's a valid provision and it's a valid concern, posed by you, Mr. Webster. However, as I previously stated, if the county board wanted to agree to provide additional funds that's contrary to what's in the original agreement, you have that discretion.
So with me asking to send this back to committee, I don't know why anyone would be opposed to it, particularly following up on Paul's statement. Okay. The money's not going to go anywhere for a year anyways. Why would you not want to let this go back to committee to thoroughly vet it? Why wouldn't you? I don't get it. I'll ask that at our caucus meeting. Why are we doing this now? It can wait.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Mr. Scroll. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Webster and a second to send this item back to committee. Is that correct?
Chairman?
Yes.
To call the question, you have to take a motion and second and a vote.
Okay, but I just want to clarify what's
Just in case
on the
anybody else
table.
wants to.
So we have a motion by Mr. Scroll and a second by Mr. Salgado to call the question. All in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So clerk, could you please call a roll on the motion by Mr. Sweeney and seconded on the amended motion?
Oh, no.
Oh, Mr. Webster, I'm sorry.
Back to committee, right?
Back to committee. There you go.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Me too.
Mr. Scroll. Mr. Sweeney.
No.
Mr. Tassoni. Mr. Michael Thompson. Mr. Ray Thompson. Ms. Valdez. Mr. Webster. Mr. Arena. Mr. Booker. Mr. Butita. Ms. Fellers. Mrs. Gorel. Ms. Hansert. Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Lindmark. Mr. McCarthy. Mr. Neighbors. Mr. Penny.
No.
And Mr. Salgado. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
9 yes, 10 no, and 1 still absent.
910. Is that approved? Ms. Vaughn? Do you have the same calculation? It fails. The motion fails. Mr. Sweeney?
I guess I would like, for the record, to ask Ms. Vaughn, from my standpoint, one final time regarding the indictment of myself in this document legally, that this board is authorized to act on its own free will, as it is about to do.
Ms. Vaughn?
Thank you, Chairman. Excluding the word indictment, but yes, the board can make a decision to allocate additional funding to RAVE, notwithstanding the agreement from 2007. That's this board's discretion.
Thank you for your legal advice.
Thank you. Mr. Arena? Mr. Arena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as I mentioned when we were debating the last motion, I am in favor of supporting the BMO. But I think also we need to recognize that it's an asset to the community, but, you know, we need to get it to the point where it's self-sufficient. We need to be looking at things that happen in management to put it in that place. And there's also the reality that it could become an obsolete facility in terms of its design, right? That it doesn't serve the needs of the community for what it is. And so there needs to be room there for us to be flexible. One of the aspects of this resolution is that we have someone from the county on their board participating in the conversation about how this money's spent, but there's nothing in here to really address what control we have if that individual comes back with a negative report, if, for whatever reason, for something that's unexpected. And I want to use as evidence for this suggestion that I have what we talked about earlier tonight with the trustee program. In that contract, there was a provision that says that they report to the board once a year on flight reduction. And that never happened. And it never happened because none of us are looking for it. There's nothing to bring it to our attention. So a lot of, promises were made here in this. And all I would like is that we are looking at this as it moves forward and being able to evaluate, does this still make sense? For a variety of reasons, for all of the things that could happen that are the unexpected, right? Because it's easy to, think, well, that'll never happen, this will never happen, but it's always the things that nobody ever thought about that comes up to bite you. And without some type of mechanism to look at it again, we have no way of controlling that. So therefore, I would like to move that in paragraph 10, or I'm sorry, the 10th whereas, I guess paragraph 10, we add where it says per year for up to 5 years, and then at the end of it, to be renewed annually, and in the 13th paragraph, again, for up to 5 years, to be renewed annually. Now, that's my motion. And then I'd like to make one more comment to it, if I may.
We have a motion by Mr. Arena for an amendment, second by Mr. Butita. Mr. Arena.
So I would just like to say that if this is a good idea today, it's going to be a good idea a year from now, and a good idea a year after that, and a good idea a year after that. So I don't see how this impairs the intent of this at all. Thank you.
Board member discussion on this amendment? Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I oppose this amendment because, first of all, there's clearly a will by a contingent of the board to not want to do this, and that's what this amendment is ultimately about. This entity confirms 3 individuals to sit on the RAVE board to govern every single penny of this money. Nomination, confirmation, an actual intergovernmental relationship over these funds. So if, I guess what we're saying, and Mr. Dornbush is going to be appointed to sit on the Capital Review Committee, and we have our very own liaison to rave through Kevin McCarthy. So I guess one thing that we're saying by not having any level of trust at all with all those ironclad types of relationships that we have is that we don't trust that relationship or certainly those people, which I'm not willing to say that. But how can an organization that's going to undertake millions of dollars in capital expenditures based off of an agreement actually be able to execute that agreement if in any given year the county board can subjectively overlord over the rave board and pull the funding? I mean, there was comments, caucus is a public meeting, so, I know that there's some people that thought that if the funds could be spent somewhere better else that year. That's not an agreement. We have protections in this agreement already. If they don't spend the money on capital, we're out. If the city does not spend at least $800,000, we're out. If the Blackhawks leave, which is the anchor tenant, we're out. So I'm not sure what would happen in the meantime that this would even be needed, other than individuals that want to be able to make it an issue every year would have the platform to do so, functionally speaking. So I oppose this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Board member discussion? Mr. Arena?
So just to respond to that, again, it's about it coming to our attention, right? So that each year the board has to say, yep, this is working great, everything's going good. But again, we took the steps to put people, a liaison on this capital improvement board with no mechanism to respond if that person comes back with some type of negative comment. Whatever that might be, we don't know. All this is a step to come in and, yeah, to look at it and say, does this still make sense? What if rave is wildly successful, right? What if things go much better than they're expecting and they don't really need that much money anymore, right? The financial situations can change. The fact that it might come back to this board for discussion or debate a year from now, is that really that terrible to happen? That it's going to ruin everything? I think, if anything else, it would keep them motivated to do the best they could to ensure that everyone here is still happy with what's going on there. And, again, if it's a good idea today, it's going to be a good idea a year from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Ms. Valdez.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just have a couple of clarifying questions. The BMO is going to be undergoing capital improvements. Are they going to be taking on the expense at the onset of the project? I don't know if you could ask Mr. Sweeney to clarify that.
Mr. Sweeney, do you know the answer to that question?
Are they going to be incurring expenses at the beginning of the project prior to us giving our financial contribution?
I would certainly defer to Gretchen to answer a question like that. I'm sorry to
If you want to come up,
bring it back
Gretchen.
up.
Are you talking about prior to 2027, the allocation?
I'm just saying they're going to be incurring expenses
Sure.
prior to us paying out all 5 years of our payments, correct?
Correct.
So we have a 20-year capital plan to replace a lot of original equipment in the building. It's not one project that we're going to be starting. It is a plan, and it's got, electrical, mechanical.
I guess my question, just to clarify it, is that you are not going to be waiting the full time that it's going to take us to make payments to you, correct? You are going to be incurring expenses as you go, and then looking in anticipation for the county board to reimburse that through our stipend to you, correct?
Yes, we're going to continue with capital expenditures and repairs and maintenance expenses as well.
Thank you. The reason that I asked that, and that's all I have for you, I promise I won't call you back up anymore. The reason that I asked that is because I, as a board member, I agree with a lot of what Mr. Arena said. However, because they are going to be incurring these expenses on good faith that the county board is going to be making the payments, even if they are fiscally in a better place in 4 years, I still think that it is our commitment as a county board to have them rely on a revenue stream. It would be phenomenal if they were in the black by millions and millions of dollars. I have full faith that they would put that back into our community and we would see the economic impact of that as well. I don't believe that I will be supporting the amendment that's on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valdez. Any further discussion, Mr. Arena's amendment? Mr. Arena.
I just want to make one last comment. I know that there was a suggestion that, oh, this is just to try to kill it, you know, a year from now. But I want to be clear to everyone, that's not my intent, right? You know, in general, I just want to say, I'm not in favor of public money being used to help support sports franchises. The Blackhawks is a $2.4 billion organization, right? They have all the money they need. You know, any of them, the Chicago Bears, the baseball teams, I just don't agree with that concept. But the BMO serves more than just the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks are just an anchor tenant, and it has value operating successfully, and it would create a big hole in the middle of downtown if it were to fail as an entity. So I want to be clear, you know, I'm saying that if this amendment passes, I'm going to vote in favor of of it if it's amended in this way, and I would encourage everyone else to also vote in favor of it if it's amended. But I think if you took the time to put language in there, to have somebody participating, we need to have something to be able to look at it just to make sure that we're happy with what transpires year to year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Any further discussion on Mr. Arena's amendment? Clerk, can you call the roll, please, on the amendment for Mr. Arena?
Certainly, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Sweeney?
No.
Mr. Tassoni? Yes. Mr. Michael Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Ray Thompson? Yes. Ms. Valdez? No. Mr. Webster? Yes. Mr. Arena? Yes. Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Butita?
Yes.
Ms. Fellers? No. Mrs. Gorel? Yes. Ms. Hansard? No. Mr. Hoffman? No. Mr. Lindmark? Yes. Mr. McCarthy? No. Mr. Neighbors? No. Mr. Penny?
No.
Mr. Salgado? Mr. Scroll? Mr. Chairman, 9 yes, 10 no, and 1 absent.
I believe the amendment fails. Okay, Mr. Sweeney.
I make a motion.
Ms. Vaughn? Ms. Vaughn has her hand up.
Just to clarify Mr. Sweeney's amendment, it will reflect what was handed out to each of the board members, which includes adding the same language to the be it further resolve clause. He didn't state it earlier, and it's been hard to jump in here. So let the record reflect, the amendment is what's been passed out and handed out to the board members. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Butita?
Yes, I have potentially one final amendment.
Okay.
And it reads as, that after this grant two rate is approved by the Winnebago County Board, that all future OSP funds that have not been previously allocated by the Winnebago County Board shall be restricted to fund only items that specifically pertain to the county's operating expense capital improvement program for the county's highway fund. With the exception that loans from the OSP fund that benefit economic progress within the Winnebago County may be entered into also. In addition, any grant to non-profit organizations that have been historically made by the OSP fund may continue with the approval of the Winnebago County Board of Trustees.
We have an amendment moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Tassoni. Any discussion on this amendment? Mr. Butita.
Okay, so my primary concern is long-term fiscal responsibility to the county. Currently, case management. Everybody hear me? Okay. And, which I just came to my attention today, which is going to be a multi-million-dollar program that's going to be required for the circuit clerk's office. So that's going to be rolled out in more detail next week at finance. We're anticipating also some additional expense for capital improvements for the juvenile detention center. There's a study being conducted right now, but one way or another, there's probably going to be additional expenses there. In addition, we have the highway equipment storage building, although it's partially in next year's budget, it's probably going to exceed that and need to come out of reserve funds. And then, in addition to that, there's a number of capital improvement projects that are submitted by every department within the county that'll total up to, we don't have a hard number for 26 yet, that, those numbers will be coming, but all that money will be coming out of reserves also. In addition to that, Carlos Molinas from the Highway Department, several weeks ago at Finance, gave us his 5-year plan for road and bridge replacement. And the county's portion of that 5-year plan is $55 million. We have nowhere near the money to pay for that right now. That is not funded. So that's a long list of items that are going to wipe out our reserve. So at the end of that period, which is just probably several years away, we're going to probably the next year have our own capital improvement projects that are going to need to be funded, and we're not going to have the funds to do it. So I look at this this particular outlay as a subsidy to the city of Rockford capital improvement program. We're going to have needs for capital improvement. I don't see other taxing entities stepping up to help us. So I want to, after this grant is made, I want to shepherd as many dollars as possible going forward. The host fee fund does have a finite term to it, so I want to shepherd as many dollars as we can and put those towards county expenses. Now, I know the arguments against this motion are going to be that, we're getting out of the economic development business, but that's not actually true, because we still have some tools in our toolbox. We still have tax rebatements, which a lot of communities use to entice economic development. We have zoning, we have permit fees, and we have regulations. So, we also would still have the short-term loans out of the operating fee. So I think we still would have tools to entice economic development and also have a look out for our long-term interest fiscally for the county. And that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Butita. Ms. Fellers and then Ms. Valadez.
I would, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to respectfully remind Mr. Batita that Rockford does exist within Winnebago County. We do pay county taxes. This is not a Rockford thing. This is our capital improvement project as far as the entire county is concerned. I also believe that I am against this amendment because I believe that any modifications to policies that are governing the use of host fees should be addressed by a separate ordinance after a great deal of discussion and research by this board, and it should not be a shoot from the hip language amendment to a funding source for an economic driver for our community. And I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Feller. Ms. Valdez.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I do also echo what Ms. Feller said. I believe that this is, and I echo the sentiments that are behind the amendment as well. I think it's something that we need to look at from a holistic view with all of our funds and not something that we should be attaching to this one economic development item. I don't believe that that is in the best interest of our constituents. However, I believe it is of such high priority that it should be looked at and addressed on its own as a separate matter. So for that, I will not be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valdez. Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to comment that I was on economic development when we established the revolving loan fund. And at that time, the goal was to shift away from giving the money out and never seeing it coming back. And I think that as a shift in policy, we should look to extend the value that we have here with this influx of money by making them loans. And maybe this revolving loan fund hasn't been utilized as much as it could be, but I think we could probably look at loan programs that are changed in some way to expand their usefulness. My experience while I've been on the board is we spend a lot of money on host fee grants that I think maybe weren't absolutely necessary, and the money's going out the door, and it's never coming back. So I think based on the points that Mr. Butita made, I support his amendment. I think that it allows us to continue doing economic development work without depleting the fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arena. Mr. Squirrel. Thank you, Mr. Scroll. Board member discussion on Mr. Butita's amendment? Oh, Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I would argue that as far as the content of the resolution goes, that it's not exactly fiscally responsible to get county departments used to a revenue stream that we know is going to be going away, because along those years, it's going to be spent on presumably increases and things like that, and then all of a sudden that rug is going to get pulled. And I would ask Ms. Vaughn, sorry to ask you too many questions tonight, but is it even possible to write her on an amendment like this to fundamentally change the way that funds are allocated and the way that they're governed by a committee through our county board rules without it being on its own in the first place?
Thank you, Chairman.
Through Economic Development Committee.
Thank you, Chairman. I would actually recommend that it be done separately. There is a host fee fund policy that I'm aware of, so I would recommend that committee and county board consider modifying that policy versus attaching it to this resolution. Thank you.
Conclude your statement, Mr. Sweeney. Board member discussion, Mr. Butita? Yes, Ms. Squirrel.
One of the hardest things for me when I got on this board, because I live in Rockford, it took me a while to realize that Winnebago County is not in Rockford. Rockford is in Winnebago County. So whatever we do here, no matter where it's at or located at, it's all Winnebago County. So what we do here tonight is for Winnebago County, and we're cooperating with another municipality that's in Winnebago County. And we must keep that on our mind, that we are Winnebago County. We're the biggest. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further board member discussion related to Mr. Butita's amendment? Hear none. Clerk, can you please call the roll? Yes. Oh, again with the hand? Mr. Penny.
Sorry, whoever's keeping an eye on the hand, I appreciate that.
Go ahead,
So Angie, Ms. Gorel actually said what I was going to say, and it's been interesting the last couple of years when I've heard the conversations about anything allocated in the city of Rockford and almost like it's not part of the county. And it's given me a little bit of, I don't know how to explain, but hesitation when I think about areas like Cherry Valley, New Milford, unincorporated parts of the county that I represent, and what would happen if I asked for some type of funds for projects even in those two. And while I look at several of my colleagues that represent all kinds of different communities within the county, I think we're going down a little bit of an interesting path to question any funds that go into any municipality or city or village outside of Rockford if we don't recognize, I guess, cities and villages within the county. I'm a little confused there. So I will reiterate what Ms. Gorel just said. Everything is in Winnebago County. Residents in my district live in Rockford. Residents in my district live in Cherry Valley. Residents in my district live in New Milford. Residents in my district live in unincorporated parts of the county. And at the end of the day, it's all Winnebago County. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Penny. Mr. Sweeney, final words?
My final word is that, just for the record, we're not allocating funds to the city of Rockford. We're allocating funds to an entity called RAVE that we appoint 3 individuals who have fiduciary responsibility over all the money that flows through there.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of my colleagues here on the county board for all their thought, input, and everything. A lot of it I agree with, and we all come together. I can see in many of the concerns that we do have, and we do have some, we do have some concerns. However, because it's written that we do have outs that are built in on this. Now, I've been a RAID board liaison for the county for the past 3, almost going on 4 years, and judiciously, they really do handle their money wisely. Everyone on the board has always been open. Everyone on the RAID board has always been there if I ever had any questions, or if anybody here had any questions. So saying that, they're always open to anyone to take a look at their facility, what is needed, and that's why we're here today, is to get these funds going. And just pretty much what my colleague John Penny mentioned is that, you know, all the surrounding areas, you know, it's just not Rockford, but we are the county. And this eventually will work its way through, but we are supporters of the BMO Center. And that's a drive that is just not the Blackhawks. There's a number of other events that take place that also draws business and also makes not only Rockford, but the surrounding areas, the villages, and the towns also important. So they should also be considered. And I just want to really thank the RAID board and being on the RAID board and being appointed. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Any further discussion on Mr. Butita's amendment? Clerk Gummow, can you call the roll from the Winnebago County Board?
Love to. Mr. Tassoni? Yes. Mr. Michael Thompson? Yes. Mr. Ray Thompson? Yes. Ms. Valdez? No. Mr. Webster? Yes. Mr. Arena? Yes. Mr. Booker? Yes. Mr. Butita? Yes. Ms. Fellers? Mrs. Gorel? Ms. Hansard? No. Mr. Hoffman? No. Mr. Lindmark? Yes. Mr. McCarthy? No. Mr. Neighbors? No. Mr. Penny?
No.
Mr. Salgado? Mr. Scroll? Mr. Sweeney?
No.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
9 yes, 10 no, 1 board member absent.
Okay, the amendment fails. Mr. Sweeney?
I move for the adoption of the resolution as amended.
We have a motion by Mr. Sweeney to move forward with the amended resolution, second by Ms. Fellers. Board member discussion. Any discussion? No? All right. Ms. Hansard? 10-9.
10 to 9.
Correct. Yeah, thank you. All right, board member discussion on the motion in front of you to approve the amended resolution? None? Clerk Gummow, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Michael Thompson? Mr. Ray Thompson? Ms. Valdez? Mr. Webster? Mr. Arena? Mr. Booker? No. Mr. Butita? No. Ms. Fellers? Yes. Mrs. Gorel? Yes. Ms. Hansard? Yes. Mr. Hoffman? Yes. Mr. Lindmark? No. Mr. McCarthy? Yes. Mr. Neighbors? Mr. Penny?
Yes.
Mr. Salgado? Mr. Scroll? Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Tassoni? Mr. Michael Thompson? Mr. Ray Thompson? Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
12 yes, 7 no, and 1 board member absent.
Very good. The resolution is approved. Mr. Sweeney.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. All right, Ms. Hanser, I saw you coming up earlier, twice. All right, Operation Administrative Committee. Oh, she's going back again. All right,
Thank you, Chairman.
thank you.
I have before you 6 resolutions on behalf of the Operations Committee. I so move the first resolution rewarding the countywide camera project additional hardware using CIP 2025 funds in the amount of $342,141. This is part of the proposed budget. It is actually under.
Good, so we have a motion by Ms. Hanser, a second by Mr. Salgado. Board member discussion on this resolution? Anybody awake? All right.
I take that's a no.
That's a no. Hearing no discussion. Any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Ms. Hanser.
Thank you. We have forth another IT resolution is authorizing the chairman of the county board to execute an intergovernmental agreement for information technology support services with Rockford Housing Authority. And this is a service that we provide to the Rockford Housing Authority. It's based on 72 hours per month at a monthly rate of $5,713.20. If it exceeds 72 hours, they are billed an hourly rate of $79.35. I so move.
Moved by Ms. Hanser. We got a second by Mr. Huffman. Any discussion, board member, on this resolution? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to the resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Ms. Hanser.
Thank you, Chairman. The next resolution awarding PC obsolescence project using CIP 2025 funds. Cost is $365,250. I so move.
Moved by Ms. Hanser, second by Mr. Salgado. Board member discussion on this resolution? Hearing none, are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Ms. Hanser.
Thank you, Chairman. Resolution awarding uninterrupted, oh, I'm sorry, did I skip? Yes, I did, forgive me. Resolution awarding cybersecurity managed detection and response using CIP 2025 funds in the amount of $377,388.
Motion? Is that a motion to approve?
That's a motion.
We have a motion to
Forgive me,
approve by
Chairman.
Ms. Hanser, and a second by Ms. Valdez. Board member discussion on this resolution? Hearing none, any board members opposed to the resolution? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. Ms. Hanser.
Thank you, Chairman. I so move resolution awarding uninterrupted power supplies using CIP 2025 funds in the amount of $66,584.
Moved by Ms. Hanser, second by Mr. Salgado. Any discussion from the board on this resolution? Hearing none, any board members opposed to the resolution? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. Ms. Hanser.
Thank you. Final resolution, I so move resolution granting a temporary construction easement from property at 650 West State Street in the city of Rockford to the State of Illinois Department of Transportation for road construction purposes.
Moved by Ms. Hansard, second by Mr. Salgado. Ms. Valdez. Any discussion on this resolution? Hearing none. Any board members opposed to the resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Ms. Hansard.
Thank you, Chairman. That concludes our report.
Very good. Thank you for the report. We've got Public Works Committee. Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Chairman. We have no report this evening. We will be having a meeting Tuesday, the 18th, 5 p.m., and I expect it to be a little bit lengthy. So thank you.
Thank you for the fair warning. We got a Public Safety and Judiciary Committee, Mr. Lindmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have no report tonight. We will be meeting next Wednesday, the 19th.
Very good. Legislative Lobbying Committee, Mr. Salgado. Thank you, Mr. Salgado. We already went through unfinished business. Nope. We got appointments that were read in on February 13, 2025. It's for the River Bluff Board of Directors. Annual compensation is none. Placed up Lowell Ingram. That is a new appointment to fill the remainder of a 4-year term for Mr. Trent Brass that will expire January 2027. Do I have a motion? We have a motion by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Arena and many others. Any discussion on this appointment to the River Bluff Board of Directors? All right, hearing no discussion. Any board members opposed to the appointment? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. We already did Finance Committee. New business. Is there any new business? Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a couple comments regarding the host fees and everything and economic development. I'm just going to ask the Chairman, John Sweeney, for that committee to review the host fee policies and make according changes if needed, as stated by some of the county board members. I understand their frustrations. I've had these frustrations when I was the finance chair. At one point, I think we should have invested it as an endowment, right, and live off the interest. As Mr. Arena alluded, $1 coming in, $1 coming out. I think that's unsustainable for us, knowing that there's a sunset clause when it's, the landfill is going to close within the last 10 years. That's what we're calculating, potentially even less than that, right? So I understand the frustration that we want to take care of our own, but there was a SALT policy. We need to follow those policies, whether it's the revolving loan aspect from it. We need to revisit that. I spoke to Mr. John Sweeney about this. If we stick to those guidelines, there is no need for us to be here an hour and a half, whatever, 2 hours, whatever it is, on debating on whether BMO Harris, whether it's our facility or highway or whatever we want to do in operations. So my suggestion, under new business, if we could please revisit that, hash that out in committee and bring something, the proposal for that, and figure out what we're going to do with the host fee, because obviously it's going to come to an end. I know Mr. Chris Dornbush gave us a projection of where we're going to end up, which I'm glad that he did that, but we need to have these constant communications. And I'm just frustrated that, from my standpoint, it's like I sit here and I brought this up and nothing was done about it. And until it's an emergency or until someone's not getting what they need or vice versa, then it becomes an issue. That's the frustrating part when I sit here, because I knew that this was going to happen and it's continuing to happen. I'm glad that we have the revolving loan where we actually give out money, but they have to pay it back, right? So that's the frustrating part about this when I'm just sitting here. And, I just hope that, everybody comes together and proposes something that's sustainable for us through Economic Development Committee. So that's all I want to say, but I'm really frustrated just sitting here listening to the conversations about this because we didn't do anything. It's like, this is the frustrating part about sometimes being a county board member, is that we're very reactive instead of being proactive, right? And when we have ideas, we should really follow through. What's the risk with it, right? There's a risk with it that we have to take sometimes those decisions, and we have to lay sometimes our ideologies, our beliefs, and put them through, for the best of everybody interested in here. So it's very frustrating. I just hope that we continue to make improvements, be more proactive, and not be reactive from this perspective. So I'm hoping that, we can make some consensus going forward on what those policies are so they can guide us and we can make decisions on that and not veer off that, those guidelines that we have out there. Just like we did, I'll just give you a quick example, just like we did with the opioids, we set out a process, who can apply for it, that's gonna happen with Marlena Dockin and some of the folks out there. So we know what the process is, right? So that everybody has a chance for those funds, stuff like that. We need to follow those rules and guidelines. So that's all I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Salgado. New business, Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm always happy to have discussions with anybody about anything and everything, but I guess what I would say about what just took place is that, you know, people elect individuals to come represent them in county government. They have their own opinions, and oftentimes those opinions differ, and what we just saw was a very, very long discussion of different agreements and then resolution, and I guess I would argue that that's very, very American in every way. I'm not sure how we get to a place where there's no differing, you know, there's not going to be some formula that just spits out approvals, yay or nay. It's always going to be subjective to the governing body. So I understand what he's saying for sure, but I mean, on the other hand, you know, disagreement and conflict in government is, you know, inherently American as well. So a decision was made tonight. Some voted yes, some voted no, and I imagine that that will never change on all items, not just with the host fee.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. New business, Mr. Webster.
Yeah, Chairman, thank you. I just want to make a comment here. And this is towards Mr. Sweeney and yourself. When you, the two of you admitted you were aware of what the contract read, yet you chose to ignore that. And you went forward with the meeting with Dave on this and not sharing this information with the board that, you know, you knew about this anyways, not sharing that information with the board. To me, that shows a bit of an appearance to some kind of backroom deal, something like that. So,
Mr.
it
Webster,
doesn't look good any way you,
address the chair. Just
any
keep
way
it
you
clean.
promote it. It doesn't look good.
Point of order.
Sadly,
Yes, we got a point of order on the floor to
that
stop the
causes my
discussion.
trust to you and to Mr. Sweeney to be greatly diminished.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. I would love to talk to you about that in the future. Mr. Sweeney.
Yes, as heartbroken as I am about that, this was actually talked about over a series of several months within our caucus meeting, this whole issue. There was a bipartisan delegation that went to the BMO to have a guided tour months ago. I made it a point in our caucus meeting, which you're a member of, Mr. Webster, that way, way, way in advance on this issue, to the point where I was actually maybe a little self-conscious that people were getting tired of me bringing it up
Mr. Sweeney,
too early.
I think we need to have this discussion
Well,
another time. If you could just wrap it up. Yeah, just wrap it up.
Okay, well, you know, being publicly accused of something like that because of
I know.
a vote not going your way is one thing, but I guess what I would just, point out procedurally is that point was made, and our attorney advised that this board was well within its right to make the decision that it made tonight. Another motion was made about host fee policy, and our legal counsel advised that not to be right and proper, and there was no objection from the member making these accusations about voting on that, and that's hypocrisy. Thank you.
Thank you. New business. None. Announcements and communications. Clerk Gummow.
Thank you, Chairman. The items received as correspondence are on file in the clerk's office. Also, let me take this opportunity to remind you that Monday, March 17th, is not only St. Patrick's Day, but it is the first day of early voting in Winnebago County. The board-approved printing of the new ballots will be the first day they can be mailed, so if you signed up for vote by mail, do not expect them to hit your mailbox until the end of next week. But if you have signed up for vote by mail ballot, you must vote by mail. This is in anticipation of the April 1st, no fools, consolidated election. Thank you.
Very nice. Announcements and communications, Ms. Fellers. A motion to adjourn by Ms. Fellers, second by the rest of the board. Ms. Gorel seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're opposed. Good night.